I was going to say, okay, so there's something I'm definitely meant to be sharing this because this connection, I feel like I don't like this. Wait, hold on, let me keep that off. The connection. Okay. Natty got in a car accident as soon as she got back to her homeland. And my friend Jenny got in a car crash and got concussion. Same thing, which is interesting. Same kind of situation. And then I was talking to Jenny about the connection between. I remember something was happening and I was driving, and I remember I almost got hit. I just felt there was a connection, and then with what we did with the space in between, and then connecting how. And I remember a long time ago, Natty saying, darkness can't travel. This, I don't even know if she knew about the Magi or anything then, because this was a while ago, but she said, darkness can't travel. If you stub your toe, that's something trying to get you, but it can't travel through something about, basically, she said it could what she was saying was the space in between versus the not at the time. This was a while ago. And I just thought it was really interesting that it's like there's a connection there, and I didn't know what it was, because it's been more than just two people. And then I was listening to this podcast. This guy has all these different psychics and different channels on, and this girl, she's really well known all over the world, and everything was going great for her, but she was helping people as a medium, but she wasn't looking within herself. Like she was helping a bunch of people, and she was really like her abilities were really strong, but she wasn't, then it started becoming more ego, and she wasn't doing the healing work within. And she then got in a horrific accident and got a concussion. She couldn't do anything. She was in bed to the point where she lost everything, lost her home, was in a wheelchair, and really had to go back inwards again and really work on the healing and kind of face her demons and all that sort of stuff. And then when she did the healing and stuff, all these different beings kind of started coming to her, like angels, and she never really looked up the angels, so it all kind of aligned. And then the other part and then everything came back again, because it was like she was connected up here, but she wasn't connected fully. So then she writes her story about that. But the other thing that was interesting about this was at the beginning in her career, she was in a home, and there was spirit. She moved into this home, and there was this spirit of a crying baby wailing at her every night, and a few things kept happening, and she was just kind of bombarded with stuff. And her friend went to go see a medium or a psychic of some sort, and the door opened, and she's like, I'll come along, but she wasn't going to participate in it. And then the door opened, and then the woman said to her, not her friend that she had the appointment with, but she looked at her and was like, the baby will stop crying as soon as you acknowledge that this is what you're meant to be doing. And you need to have one foot in the spirit. You're meant to connect, and you're avoiding this. And as soon as you just say to the universe, okay, blah, 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 the baby will stop crying and all this bombarding will stop. That was the first thing she said when she opened the door. And she and it was a really interesting podcast, but I definitely felt, and I was saying this it was more of it's more when people kind of are out of alignment, I guess, with things or things not working. But I was like, I know there's a connection with what's happening with the concussion, and it's happened to a few people, and I'm like, there's a link here. And then when I listened to the podcast, like it all, and the way that she kind of showed that, and her kind of lessons with that, I thought that was really interesting. And then as soon I was almost in tears yesterday, because I was in tears for part of it, but when I heard the part about the screaming baby and the stuff, because there's things here, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
Is this what this was? And then everything went silent. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. It was obviously, I had a really good feeling about moving into this place. I was meant to move into this place.
Yeah.
And I'm in Thailand. There's it's an old city everywhere.
Are you in Bangkok?
No, I'm north of. It's still quite a big city, but it's not Bangkok. Bangkok's
mad.
Bangkok's wild. I remember. Well, yeah, I'm going back to Bangkok though on Christmas Day to pick up my mom. But yeah, it's. I remember my friend even was, well, it's kind of isn't going to happen kind of anywhere. And even when we were doing the first clearing, you're like, there's pockets of energy kind of like or this. There's bits everywhere all throughout the city that got cleared. But
maybe it's a reminder, just a reminder that you're in the right space, you're doing the right thing. Kind of when I was asking Natty about this premonition about my family, and I was like, do I tell them what do I do with these things? And she was, premonitions are kind of just a sign to when they come true, to kind of just a reminder or to show you that you're how powerful you are, and that this is real, right? Because sometimes it's like easy to lose a little bit of faith in that. So it's kind of like getting one of those signs, it's when you see numbers, like angel numbers and stuff like that, it's a sign that you're going the right way.
yeah.
It's kind of that, maybe not necessarily you're going the wrong direction. It's just a reminder.
Was it something to do with death, or was it more like a thing, or like, yeah.
It was actually something that I got. It was just a circumstance where when I first got divorced, I was having a lot of very vivid dreams and visions as I started to do meditation. And one of them was me and three of my siblings in a pool. I fell into the pool or jumped into the pool, or somehow I got into this pool of water, and I was trying to struggle, and then I realized all I had to do was just stand up. It was actually just waist deep water, and I was like, "Oh, this is fine." And my siblings were also in as well, and they were just drowning and drowning. I was like, "Guys, come on, stand up! Come on, stand up!" And I was the first one in, so I knew that based on my intuition was telling me that this was basically saying that they're going to go through something that I'm going through. And the only thing that I was really, really going through at that time that happened was my divorce. And now I'm starting to see the relationships of my siblings start to break apart, where one of them got divorced a year later after I did. Now my other brother is in separation with his wife. That happened this year. And then I heard, just talking to my mom, that my one sister, the other person that I saw in this vision, is struggling with her husband. They're going through therapy right now. So they're on the brink of possibly, separating or divorce or whatever. And, when it was only my one brother, it only happened to him, 4 years ago, I was like, I don't know. Maybe I thought it was something else. But now that I see my other two siblings who were also in this vision going through similar experiences, or possibly approaching that, that's when I started, maybe this thing really is true. And so that's what I was asking. I was like, do I tell them? Was I supposed to tell my brother, 4 years ago? Was I supposed to say something, and
Yeah.
and she was saying, no, you don't need, you don't.
No, but it's like you could have if you wanted, and everything
Yeah.
that you decided upon is the right decision at the time that will go down a different, because it's kind of, when we were talking a few weeks ago, when I was like, I just want to help, and you're like, well, you can help, or you can, when someone finds the answer, then you could be about that.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
Be
it's kind of
excited
like
for them.
if you would have said something to them a few years ago, this is what's going to happen or something, they would have been like, sure, or I don't know, in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. They would think you're arrogant. What are you talking about? You're just stupid.
Yeah, but it is also reassuring. Yeah, the reason I was asking about that was because, and it's the other thing too that's interesting about this is when you get a message, it's kind of like at first when something comes in and it's, the beginning, it's if something doesn't resonate, you send it away, because the first it's either something, you kind of have to discern everything, right? It's something could be a message or it could not be, but then if you kind of look into it so much and become attached to it, then it becomes an entity in itself, right? That was kind of like with
I see
the message that I got, remember, about my dad.
Yeah.
I kept thinking about it over and over again. It was a message. Time doesn't necessarily mean time doesn't exist, right? So it could be a year from now, it could be a month from now, it could be some point. And then the more I think about it, the more there's like, do you remember? And then we went through and we looked, and then there was some stuff attached to my emotions in that capacity.
Yeah.
And then I remember there was some stuff that made sense at the time. My dad I saw very clearly some stuff happening.
Yeah.
And then my dad got COVID and he got really, really, really sick, but then he ended up making it through it. As soon as I realized some stuff with that too, just because he doesn't necessarily want my help in a healing session, I could still do that in my dream work with his higher self, and we could still have chats and see how that is going. And he could still, And it was when I had that aha moment that you could still help people, because we're helping people all the time. We just don't necessarily, we're in so many places all at once, right?
Yeah.
And when I had that realization, that's when his COVID just immediately got better. So there could have been a chance maybe it went a different way,
Yeah, you
or
could have changed the timeline there, because that's the other thing about premonitions is they're based on a possible timeline. And because of humans' choice, you were saying earlier, I could decide to tell them or not, and that could change things a little bit. Every action we take when we get one of these things, but not just us, but other people that might be involved in it can adjust what happens. Because
timeline adjustment, timeline anchoring, which is what
you know,
time is. Time is only an anchor of a point.
never heard it that way. That's really cool.
Oh, that's from the book I'm working on.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to go get it and read it to you about the whole anchoring thing. Yeah. It was interesting too, because we talked about it, your source code, right? And then
Hmm.
the lady that wrote the rainbow tablets, she's on this Facebook group, the Ley Lines. It's kind of a smaller group, but she also just posted an excerpt, and she was talking about this new, there's always this new energy coming,
Hmm.
because we're always evolving. But she said that it's called the source code, your source code, and it's being activated, your third eye with your heart. And I was like, that's the book. And I'm like, let's write this. But it was very, I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you another time, because there's parts that I've written out or typed. But it's that it's light or time is one of the most complex things in our world. It's deeply connected to the complex matrix that we're in. And
Hmm.
it's only an anchor, and it only exists when we were like, it was anchored in time, was created when we were born. So the creation, when we were created, you could even say when the universe was created, because we are a universe, or we are the universe in
Hmm.
itself, right?
Yeah.
Time was installed into us and as anchor points. And that's why there's so much density attached, because what you're looking at with time is time lights. And there's different, it was explained so well when I wrote it. I was like, wow, this is interesting. But it's like, we are all lights. We are all beings of light. We are all light beings. And even when you explain that in that way, and then there's each day is a timeline, or each moment is a timeline, and there's moments and movements that move you up. And I even drew a diagram of it because they were explaining that. And then there's moments to move down. And that's why when we're leaping up, that's like an extra jump. But every decision and every moment is an anchor. And, they're bringing me into the realm of clarity, the realm of abundance, all the realms that we're working in, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just another way. It's just, yeah, it's and then when we get attached to something in the past, that's nostalgia. And it's just an anchor of time that is essentially a memory. And it's the same way that if you're trying to remote view, or if you're trying to think about something in the future, it's the same thing. We just don't realize it's the same thing. It's kind of, but when it comes to the past and stuff, we're looking at the past, we've anchored, there's been some density that's become attached to it, and like a gravity that's been attached to it, or
Yeah. I was
um
just gonna, speaking of gravity, I was just gonna say is like, I think wonder if that's gravity and time. That's how gravity and time are related, is gravity is used as that anchor point or density that holds it down to a certain area.
yeah. And then I think it's also really interesting. It's also really interesting too, because there's been a few things like, I'll do daily clearing or weekly clearing, it just
Hmm.
depends. But then there's certain things that come up. And I remember it was like, oh, this big cord is being cleared between me and it was another person. And then it was this big dense cord being, cleared. And then that is resolved, all those anchor points in time are, and then literally the next day, the girl, it was a friend and I, because I'd been trying to message her, it was over the course of a few months. The next day she sends me a message and was like, hey, how are you? Sorry, I've just been busy with stuff, blah, blah, blah. What's going on? You know what I mean? And I was like, because it was clearing that it's what we're calling different words for different things, right? Like
Yeah.
chords, we're
Yeah.
clearing anchors. I remember I talked to someone from high school, and we were just chatting, and I was talking about what I was doing now. And she was like, oh, I remember you used to always talk about psychic stuff, this and that when you were younger. And I was like, no, I didn't. I didn't say that, but I was like, no, I know I didn't. I never have. And I know that I've done a lot of timeline adjustments, me.
Mhm.
And I know that I don't get told the specific things, but I know I've done a lot of it. And I'm like, and I know very specifically that there's, say, people I've deleted on my Instagram. And I know
Mhm.
that I've gone back and done a bunch of timeline adjustments, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And I've gone back and I was like, oh man, I wish I didn't delete them or whatever. And I know for 100% fact that I did. And I went back and I looked and they were never deleted. So it's just bizarre. And then, I mean, we could go down into the, not bizarre, it's cool. We could go down into the Mandela effect of so many things, right? That's
Mhm.
all different people. So there's like, okay, there's the collective timeline anchors collectively for the planet raising, and then there's individual ones. So
That makes sense. Certain anchors are pulling the entire Earth there, and then but the individual ones are what are allowing certain people to kind of go there before we're even there and tap into that because they're moving at a faster pace than the collective is. It's because it's the Earth stuff is an inevitable shift. Is that what that is for the?
well, this is why I think it's interesting with when you try to wrap your head around the concept of everything is happening all at once, because there's no such thing as space and time. So anything in a past life is always is happening.
Yeah.
Everything from a past life or different like parallel lives, or everything's already that's what they say, it's happening simultaneously at
Okay.
the same time. So there was something that I was listening to where, people will talk about, oh, this happened to me in a past life, and this is why I say I can't speak my truth in this life, or something like that. And then it was a really interesting point that the person made where it's kind of in the same where in this life, there's certain things you need to do to take your power back.
Mhm.
Say you're a demon, I don't know, something that's causing fear or disruption, you need to take your power back, right? It's the same thing with your past life. You can just go and rewrite what happened in that past life and send love to it, and it's completely then removes all the anchors, because that's what you're doing. That's what I did with a client that was basically told not to go out in public because they would instantly get sick and die. Their aura, or their mechanism for getting sick, the shield. I don't know why my words aren't working with this one, but and then as soon as we had the appointment, they did another test a few days later, and their test results were the complete opposite. And the doctors were like, if we didn't do this test that showed this in your blood, knowing that it's like you're the same person, we would have thought that we got the blood test mixed up.
Wow.
And then when we did
Wow.
the test, or no, when we did the session, we went and did timeline adjustment from something way back, not only from his childhood, but
Mhm.
also from a past life. And I was just told, we're doing timeline adjustments, and then everything after that was fine. And it's the same. So it's like you're going back and changing it. You might have, this is why it may not seem, we might have a memory still from the moment
Yeah.
of our childhood, or say, let's go with you for your moment of divorce. But you can go back and rewrite all those things, send love to those parts of you,
Mhm.
change that. It does change, and then work on the change that, send love to the memories as well. And then it frees you from those anchors.
Yeah, because you're going back and you're changing the past, which then affects the future. Even though you still remember that it happened a certain way, it's you remember the old timeline because you're in the new future. When you do that, that's just what happens. But
And that's
everything
why I couldn't
around you
remember.
doesn't. Yeah.
That's why I couldn't wrap my head around stuff at the beginning
Mhm.
when I was asking specifically, what do you mean timeline adjustment? And they're like, we'll tell you later. It'll all make sense. We always get the message, it will all make sense. And I was like, what do you mean? And the more we do this, I think the big game changer for kind of aha moments too is when we did the healing with the time and
Mhm.
gravity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to then find that video, one of the videos, you always find the videos when you need to find them at the right time. That video I found, and then at the end of that video, first of all, they were talking about the Magi. And then they said that some scientists were capturing new image of this new Earth of some sort. And they said it's one free of time and
Mhm.
gravity. And it all just clicked because and they showed it from the vibration or the frequency of it, right? So yeah, I think that.
It's where everything, it's the synchronicity of it all that's where it's
And
just
I
like
don't,
bringing everything
yeah,
into place, right?
the synchronicities, because everything's supposed to happen. You're in the right space. It's always a lesson. I mean, I definitely think I just found it very interesting that, even your dad and the work that he does too, right? With frequencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that's not a coincidence that, we're learning about more things to do with frequencies and how to get everything can
Yeah.
be
It's
created
all
on.
created from frequency, and it's all emitting frequency. Everything is frequency, energy, and it's not just coming down to just using different words to explain things. It's energy. It's anything that has made of energy emits a magnetic field, and that magnetic field has a frequency. I believe is what it is. So whether you're talking about frequencies or whether you're talking about energy, whether you're talking about light, they're all light is a form of it's created because of energy, and it has a magnetic field and it has a frequency. So it's all the same thing that we're saying. So that's why we can use the words interchangeably, and that's the beauty of it. But it's and so that's why you can approach it many different ways of healing, and also why it communicates. Well, that's why light language is it's called light language. Is light, but it's a frequency because that's light is just energy that has a frequency that has a magnetic field that has a frequency. So it's just and a frequency is also a sound, and that's why we could talk about using sound as a healing modality because
And
it's all the same. Yeah,
prayer
hmm
prayer is intention. The reason that was another interview that I was watching too, or another podcast where they brought up prayer, and you know
hmm
prayer is intention of sending love at a vibration, or being in that frequency with the intention. That's why you could send prayers and pray for people. It's the intention, it's the love and the intention of what you're doing. And so that's why intention is so powerful. And you can call it prayer, you can call it manifestation, you can call it spells if you want to, or you can call it the placebo effect, right? That's why it's so powerful. It's just we have different words for it.
yeah. And when you're speaking with your voice, you're creating a sound through that prayer, which is thereby a frequency, which is affecting, and that frequency, the type of frequency from that sound, like whether it's you know a healthy frequency that causes healing or not is based on that intention, because the intention is is a reflection of the level of the frequency that you're emitting. It's kind of when we hear people talk in different tones, right? So if they talk in one tone, you sound angry, and so that's a low frequency. When you hear someone talk in a very soft tone or a very loving tone, or that's a higher frequency. And so it's that with intention. When your intention has an intention of love behind it, it's got a higher frequency. When it's an intention of to hurt someone, it's a lower frequency. So it's all that, and that is what flows behind that prayer. It's just so cool, like how it just I don't know, at least in my head makes sense when I see it all.